Joseph, can you hear us? Testing. This team's doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you too. Hear us?
It's freezing down there. I can believe it, yeah.
He's saying he can't now.
I don't hear from my boss either, so. Like I'm working. Okay, I like it.
I can't. Yep, I can. What time do you leave Salem?
I left it.
All right, we are on the air now, on the record, and for our work session, this is our work session, and first item on our agenda is a council goal update on our affordability goal. And that's being presented by Michael Osborne, Peter Passarelli, and our city manager.
And assistant.
And assistant, okay. One of them remotely, okay.
The whole gang. Well, I'll kick us off, and I'll kind of be the facilitator today because you have three of my most brilliant color commentators as your goal leads for this one in Mike, Peter, and Joseph. So we've reached our third kickoff of goals. Thank you all for kind of helping us refine and improve this process around how this template is working. I think it's going to set us up really well, and the future monthly meetings for each goal, we can really just dive right into the actions and talk about what's been achieved and what's coming up next. So our third, and definitely there was no order in this, it's just as beloved as the other two goals, but is affordability. And we defined affordability at our retreat as identifying opportunities to provide utility relief and support more income restricted housing development in Milwaukee. That's really, that focus as defined in that statement of utilities and housing is really why Peter, Michael, and Joseph are the three musketeers on this. You know, Peter runs our utilities as our public works director. Joseph, as our acting community development director, has really overseen the city's work to support and encourage housing development. And then Mike makes it all happen by being our finance director. And the utility billing technician, who a lot of the things we're going to be talking about would actually fall on that person's work plan, reports to Mike. So a lot of what I think we'll get into today and in future conversations is going to be, how does our utility billing system work? And Mike can today and ongoing educate us on that. But I figured we would walk through this as we have with the other ones. We'll kind of go section by section, starting first with the why this goal. And I'll give you a chance to sort of read this paragraph we put together. And the question is, does this articulate to you why you elevated this as one of your 3 goals in the recent retreat?
I have a cheat sheet.
You do. I should have said that as well in the intro. Councilor Kosarabadi is the council lead on this goal and met with staff in advance to help refine the action plan before it went into your packet. So he is also a color commentator.
The only thing I might add when I was reading this, like I don't know the words for it exactly, but I talked about how as our downtown gets nicer, as our city gets to be a more attractive spot to live, I don't want to see this place. I still want to be a working class community. And that's not necessarily like there's a separate conversation and people are feeling a cost of living crunch and they're interrelated, but I think it's about maintaining affordability and our city's kind of like working class character. And I don't know how you describe that, but I have faith that you would be able to do it well, Emma.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about like unintended consequences?
I think it's, yeah, it's like that economic displacement.
Yeah.
It's the challenge. If the average sales price of a home in Milwaukee has gone up by 41% in the last 5 years, they're maybe not unintended or maybe not intended. It's just the nature of displacement will happen. And how do we prevent that displacement?
Well, I mean, I think that's been at the core of a lot of the conversations and the whole idea of the next generation, right? The kids of the Milwaukee residents and who can't afford to stay in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Land banking.
I don't know how we call that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a land bank strategy, because that's how you can maintain affordability on land.
I don't have a recommendation on change or anything like that. It's just really an observation is that, affordability can kind of be this sort of big issue that everybody nods their head on and said, yeah, things cost too much. And so I kind of like, some of the things that are in here about why this goal. And so in the communications that we take to the community, I think, I think you can overwhelm them with a lot of this information, but I think at the high level, what constitutes, cost burden, for a family and that kind of thing. What does that mean in dollars and cents? And then 52% of our households are cost burden. That equates to this many households or this many people, so that it becomes a little bit more real rather than this sort of cloudy do-good thing.
Sure.
And so I think that, that may get folded into the more of the action steps. But I think that why this goal is pretty important because I think to a lot of people, it's just kind of like, yeah, things cost too much. Kind of integrated.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I do think also, though, we have to be careful about not creating expectations that we can control factors of affordability that we can't. And so, I think we're on the right course here with this, but we don't ever actually say that, grocery prices are not something we, that we're focusing on housing and utilities because they are something we have
We can
the power to influence.
but not control.
Right.
And like to your point, some of those things we can't even influence, like probably grocery prices.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Most definitely.
So maybe something like the goal is also focused on housing and utilities, areas where the city has power to influence costs for local residents. other
That's good.
drivers of affordability, such as, grocery prices, are out of the scope of this.
It's a new word, groceries, right?
Pardon?
Yeah, me too. It's like equalize. Made it up.
I liked the list, the what do we want to accomplish
Okay.
list.
Mhm.
I guess to the council president's point, is there something we should say about displacement
Mhm.
and keeping Milwaukeeans able to, I mean, I do think that was a lot of what we talked about at the retreat and other times we've talked about this, so maybe somehow just
Mhm.
working that into one of the bullets.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah,
This is slightly related, where it's kind of, when we say income restricted housing inventory, it's partially marketing, but it also underlies kind of what Emily was talking about. I think income restricted ignores the like naturally occurring affordable units. And if we want to prevent displacement, I think we need to have naturally occurring affordable units. And I think natural occurring affordable units are much harder to get than that income restricted. But I think having broader language about maybe it's just our city's affordable housing inventory allows for us to talk about naturally occurring units.
you think naturally occurring affordable units are harder to obtain to, I think we have a lot more of them than we have
That's actually such an
affordable
interesting,
units.
I would be curious, I think here's the challenge I see. Maybe we're getting way too in the weeds, but we build new middle housing and people are like, oh my God, it's 400,000.
Mhm.
But part of that's like, well, new construction is just gonna be more expensive anyways.
Right,
And all of the new stuff that we build in 20 years will likely be incredibly affordable relative to other stuff, but right now doesn't feel affordable. And maybe I guess that's the tension that I feel. Like the new stuff that we build, any additions that we make aren't always, it's harder to make those naturally affordable unless we put government restrictions on them. But a lot of it is maintaining the existing
yeah,
supply
I
as
think
well.
our naturally occurring affordable housing is 30 and 40-year-old housing. I don't
Yeah.
think it's new housing.
Yeah.
It is the
Yeah.
older duplexes over on House Street and
Yeah.
that neighborhood. And I frankly worry that we're gonna lose some of them because people are gonna say, oh, I can build 8 units instead of this duplex, you
Yeah.
know? So I mean, I do think the whole middle housing thing does risk losing some of our naturally occurring affordable housing. And it's always been a thing that bothered me since, since HB 2001.
I'm not sure there's really such a thing as a completely market-driven, affordable new housing, I agree that could occur, that probably exists with some of the older housing stock. But everything that's, got some sort of cap on it right now has benefited from, changes in the zoning
Yeah.
or through some sort of, government intervention of some sort. But I'm not sure that there is any
Natural.
market-driven, naturally occurring new construction.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know of any. I wish there were.
Yeah,
I'm not
but-
sure there is.
I think it's hard when everything market rate is
Yeah,
naturally unaffordable.
in a region where the market is desirable. I think Peter talks to me a lot about, hey, I'll go back to Midwest and get a $100,000 brand new house.
So if you could somehow type all of that up into a bullet point.
I do add, I appreciated your comment, Council President, about, we focus on the income restricted housing inventory, which is generally going to be new stuff. But then I added preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing. Joseph, if you're able to chime in here, did our housing needs assessment or anything in the production strategy talk about levers the city has to help preserve naturally occurring affordable housing? Because to your other point, Mayor, about not over-promising things we can't control, I'd want to know, like, what's the action the city can take to do that?
Yeah, there's nothing specific. It's a good conversation around naturally occurring affordable housing. I have trouble just personally with that term, just because in a market where it's so hot, in the Portland metro, that's one of the biggest drivers. So it's really, I almost think just calling it housing preservation, just preserving what's already there, is our best chance of creating naturally occurring affordable housing, because there's so many different components to, one person trying to buy a home versus a family of four buying the same property. It's affordable for maybe that four-person home, but not necessarily for that one person. And that's what income restricted housing inventory does. Is it accounts for that? Doesn't necessarily account for that in the free market.
Thanks, Joseph. And the other thing that makes me slightly uncomfortable sometimes about naturally occurring affordable housing is sometimes it's really poor quality housing. And that's why it's cheap. There are developments I know around town where I think we would call them naturally occurring affordable housing, and I also don't know if they are the type of place that, especially from an energy efficiency standpoint, that are, great for folks to live in. So I do like, maybe it's just preserve existing housing stock.
I mean, I will say one of the conversations I've had is with, unfortunately, Adam Brown, who's no longer with the county. But one of the conversations that came up when we were all here, I think, around Kellogg, and when the creek is gone and that's when the dam is gone and that's a new park, there's some more affordable, older apartments up the creek on both sides that are, that I would love to see some help in preserving as middle income apartments and not see them be, suddenly capitalize on, we have
Turn into
a
waterfront.
park in front of us now, we turn over into a higher income kind of thing. And so the county, does have some money to buy apartments and keep them at some level of affordability, but I don't know to what extent that flexibility has been impacted by, the changes at the federal level and what's coming in terms of, diminished federal funding and stuff. But it's a conversation I think we should try to, start with the new people at the county.
Counselor Sevendor is not here, but I'll put on my best Sevendor hat. With the scattered sites, there's some real worries about the affordable housing that we already have in the town and how we can fix that.
Yeah.
Maybe my one addition to this would be, you added affordable housing stock. I think it's important to specify affordable.
Did you, speaking of the scattered sites, do you know what's happened with that bill on those?
And we've got a whole legislative briefing later, but in Ways and Means, I think the challenge is going to be limited resources to walk out of session with. But I know a lot of Clackamas County legislators have asked about that. So I think that is that's the right thing that has to happen, but limited funds.
Yeah, those are definitely an opportunity for ownership too, which changes, it was interesting, this table here about our baselines and zero ownership. And we have 15 coming online with short stack, but
This is also where, I don't know, the income restricted units versus like a condo that's just going to be more affordable to buy, or like a townhome that costs $400,000. I'm happy with both of those, but how do we capture? This is just a home ownership opportunity that's affordable relative to what else is on the market. I don't know how we put that in or if we need to, but that's the thing I think about.
well, I do think in this affordable housing metrics, maybe a separate second thing is middle housing units built.
Yeah.
Because I do think middle housing units are,
Yeah.
they're not affordable as in income restricted, but they are a more
Yeah.
option. And yeah, I think we should be tracking that.
Okay, so I think are we feeling good about the big picture, why this goal and big objectives of what we want to accomplish? And are we ready to move into measures of success?
We kind of have, yeah.
Okay. So for measures of success, one thing that's a little different from the other goal sheets is we did try to put the housing stuff and the utility stuff a little separate because it was starting to get a bit messy when it was all bunched together. So maybe starting with the housing space, income restricted units, by AMI and rental and ownership, I've added middle housing, and then you'll see in both housing and utility, we would like to start tracking, we don't have a baseline right now, but awareness of housing assistance programs, because the city may not always be the agency that can provide the resource or provide the support, but we can definitely help make sure our residents are aware of them, whether it is utility relief or housing support. And I think that we should really want to start a kind of concerted communications campaign through this and then track the community survey. Are people saying they're more aware of what they can?
Yeah, and the city launched a housing resources page about 2017 or so. But I don't know to what extent it's been kept up. But yeah, there was a big push at that time to try and, provide people with access to info and renters' rights and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I was very curious about, we don't have none of the units at Hillside and the tower are 30% AMI. And nothing at Northwest Housing Alternatives is 30% AMI. Guess I'm looking at Joseph.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm jumping in. No, yeah, nothing's listed as 30% AMI. They did have the transitional housing open up with Northwest Housing. And I know there's a couple units there, so that might have changed. Can double check that.
Okay.
And then
really feel-
the manor is not, as I understand. And then with the Hillside phase 1, phase 2, there might be some 30%, but that's still not clear.
At least according to the page they have on Metro, there will be in the new. But I'm really surprised that the manor isn't partially 30%. I mean, it was a lot of people with disabilities in there. I would think we're on a pretty, well, anyway.
Yeah, I can double check. That was off the county's page. So
Okay.
I can double check though.
Joseph, one follow-up question for you. I know when we talked to Zach at Polish, he mentioned something about there's residents there using vouchers, and I would assume that's probably the same at 7 acres. Is that data that's publicly available, or would that require like a big lift of outreach to private landlords and developers to find out if anyone is living in their complexes but using housing assistance vouchers?
Yeah, good question. I think the best way to find that information is actually going directly to the county and seeing if they can provide us a list of those that are receiving vouchers that live in our city limits.
Because there's definitely some at Axle Tree. I've heard that from several sources. Yeah.
7 acres too, yeah.
Yeah, capturing that voucher would be interesting. I guess, can I clarify, Joseph? This is not the new numbers. This is reflect short stack. This is reflect the new Hillside, because looking at new Hillside is lower affordability numbers than it is that.
Correct.
Yeah, no, it says December 2024.
Correct.
That's the baseline. So end of 24, the Hillside and short stack will come on in 26.
Okay.
But yeah, I wanted to check in particular.
Maybe there is a way that we could denote units in the pipeline though. Because the mayor's point, Hillside doesn't open until 26. We have Sparrow not starting construction until about 26. Like, I'd love to see if our goal at the end says we built Hillside, that's it. Doesn't feel like we did affordability. I want to see more stuff in the pipeline reflected.
Any other comments on the housing metrics, or should we move on to the utility metrics? Peter, can you talk a little bit about energy efficiency program participation? I mean, I've known, I've heard we have something with Community Energy Project. I know the county has some kind of weatherization programs, like how much is the city involved in that, and how much do we try to plug people into those things?
Interestingly enough, I just signed an invoice today for the Community Energy Project. They were billing us for 3 homes that took advantage of their programs that we've been subsidizing. So I think they subsidize them. We've subsidized by $250 each. These are both in terms of the home energy score. We have that program that we work with, the Community Energy Project, but there's also some of the, Katie talked about it at one of her updates related to energy efficiency and installing new
Like
heat pump
pumps.
water heaters, sort of decarbonization of some of these buildings there. So we've done 3 of them just in the last
Where they've like done upgrades to heat pumps?
Yes,
and
yes,
stuff.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I wouldn't, it's one of the first ones that I've seen recently. But we had 3 homes here in Milwaukie that took advantage of it.
I remember Katie saying she was going with Community Energy Project out to knock on doors or put door hangers on or something.
She has, or they have done that, for sure. I can't really speak so much on the larger, county program. That is a data, some information that we need to dig into a little bit more and get their information on weatherization programs and what residents here in Milwaukie are taking advantage of. In addition to that energy efficiency program with the county, we're also taking a look at, getting data from the Energy Trust of Oregon. That's a partner that we've worked with before. And I think we'll be able to get some information there in terms of how many community members are taking advantage of their programs. And I think that's both residential and commercial, because it could apply for, some commercial properties that use it as well.
Yeah, I see that in my bill, the
Oh, yeah.
flyers that come in your utility bills that tell you about weatherization or whatever. So, yeah, it'll be great to whatever extent we can, how many Milwaukee households are participating.
That first metric, that annual rate of utility fee increases, so that's just sort of that annual, what's the rate increase been over each of the 5 years, if you look at it. So, as a total, we're looking at about an increase of about 1.79% per year over the last 5 years. And then I've got it also broken down for each of the utilities.
I think it's worth stating for this one that it's not without some heartburn that staff proposed putting it on there, just because I think we've not tried to beat around the bush that there's probably some asks for utility rate increases coming based on CIP needs and other things. But I think we felt like it was still a very important metric to track, and it is what people feel. And yes, you might have to have some increases to account for things, but what I think we're proud of in Milwaukie is we've smoothed a lot of the volatility. We don't do these kind of yo-yos, and that's where that 5-year average helps, I think, show a true story about, the increment there.
And I think if you look past that 5 years, if you go back a little bit further, going back sort of that 10-year mark, we did have some significant increases on like stormwater, where based on the previous stormwater system plan that had made a recommendation of what those revenue requirements were to meet the goals of that stormwater system plan. There were significant increases in there that, 12, 13, 14% increases on stormwater fees. But over the last several years, I think the last 3 years, I think we've kept it at 0% increase on stormwater. And we even had a little, reduction on the wastewater fee, residential fee last year.
I have a kind of dumb math question for you, Peter. When we say these are adjusted for inflation, but like the safe fee increases I know have been tagged to inflation,
I'm not
still,
Yeah.
we should probably just get rid of the adjusted
The
for
adjusted for
inflation.
inflation,
Okay.
yeah. The safe and SSMP, as Emma was mentioning, that's one that we tie to the construction cost index. And we've been using a 5-year average to try to keep that increase lower. And that has some impacts, of course, on revenues, right? There were a couple of years ago where we saw that construction cost index on an annual basis, like 12 or 13%, and we were doing, 5 or 6% increases.
What is the decision point for changing that policy? Is that
You all. I think it'll be something we'd explore with budget committee starting in August.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you were asking about tying it to the index or just changing
I'm
the?
interested in just exploring the 5-year average and if that continues to be representative of the economic, environment that we're in.
And now the 5-year average is probably higher than it is than the construction cost index is currently. So it's sort of,
Went down so much.
because it's gone down.
Okay.
But that is something we talk about through the fee schedule setting
Okay.
process.
And that 5-year average is forecasted through the budget process? Or is it forecasted internally annually?
Well, we use the Seattle construction cost index, so it's a measure, it's a metric that's, developed. I think the engineering news and review tracks like construction costs for different regions and cities. And that's the tool that we used.
This isn't a 5-year forecast, it's a 5-year
Look back.
look back.
This number, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one great edit you all helped us make to this template is that there's really metrics of success, things we really do want to see, we have some control over and want to see a trend on. There's also a bucket of data for all of our goals that are like things that inform our understanding. We might not be fully the only, influencer, but we need to track it to contextualize all the work we do. For this goal in particular, there's a lot. I think I shared with Councilor Massey that the first draft of this action plan, I think this blue table was 5 pages long. So we've really tried to pin down like 3 key indicators for general affordability, 3 key indicators for housing, and 3 key for utility. But we want this to be usable for you. I mean, that if this is a tool for you all, so this is a starting point. Let us know what you think. On general affordability, I commend Councilor Kosarabadi has really, I think, opened our eyes to the ALICE data set as a way to look at affordability beyond just poverty levels or cost burden. It looks at that kind of bigger picture and actually ties it to the regional economy. So we'd like to continue to track that ALICE data. We do think, though, it's still important to track Milwaukie population below the federal poverty line as well. And then cost burden. So those kind of 3 different ways of looking at this question of really who is facing challenges affording their basic needs if they live in Milwaukie.
And so it's census data that tells us the cost burden.
I believe so.
I wondered about that. where we get
get that data. So I know that those calculations were done for our housing capacity analysis. I have a feeling it's a combination of income data from Bureau of Labor Statistics and then like census data as well. But Joseph, you might know more. It's your team that crunched those
Yeah.
numbers.
It's a mix of census data, and you're right, also income, that's also included in census.
We're kind of tracking this as an additional data set. To our point earlier about displacement, I would be curious what it would be like to have that as one of our, like, how will we measure success? Is there some like, does the AMI stay more stagnant in Milwaukie, or like, I'm trying to capture it where like, how do we measure for like Milwaukie remains working class to some extent?
Well, so I like that. I like that line of thinking. And I do think, the thing that's come up several times is that our median income is way below area median income. And is that delta the thing we track?
Yeah.
Like our, Milwaukee's median income versus area median income.
Yeah.
I think I know
That
what
we
you-
don't want our median income getting any closer to area. Yeah.
Well, I think I know what you're getting at. I'm trying to figure out how you do that. I mean, I think that the knowledge is in the information, through, the census data and the Bureau of Labor Statistics is there, but I think it's hard to, sort of extract knowledge from that information.
Yeah.
And I think it can be done, but it requires some thought, and I'm not sure that it's easily translatable to, people. But it's an interesting question. I think you alluded to it. It's like, okay, so if 52% is cost burdened, 30% of households are cost burdened, how do you measure success if you're trying to limit displacement? Does it stay at 30%? Does it move up? Does it move down? What direction is progress and success?
I think
Because we kind of got two different things going here. We got gentrification, the downside of gentrification versus the upside of gentrification.
I think you're hitting on, this is what I was like trying to separate. I would like the number of people who are low income who are cost burdened to go down. My vision for a utopian Milwaukie is that low income folks live here without being cost burdened. Separate from that is like if our medium income went on par with the Upper East Side of New York, like sure, we see our medium income goes up and that maybe is a metric of success, but I see that as a failure and that like, does that leave behind? And how do we measure for that? This is where I don't know the answer.
Yeah. I hear the tension you're wrestling with, and I actually think this is a fascinating conversation when you have an economic development goal and an affordability goal. Because you also don't want people to interpret, wait, you don't want me to get a higher paying job? Like, I'd love to get a higher paying job in Milwaukie. If Oregon Tool would hire local people, wouldn't this be great? This, and I can't remember which of my brilliant staff gets the credit. I think it might have been Mandy Bird, but she thought this housing choice decision-making idea, this is not something we do right now, this would be a new thing. But could we, when someone is terminating utility service, so they are moving, could we send a survey and say, why are you moving? Now, a lot of people are probably not gonna take the survey, but at least give us some data on, are you moving because you've been priced out? Or are you moving because your life circumstances changed? Or are you moving because you just had a kid and need a bigger house in Milwaukee? I think getting a little clearer on why people are making decisions about their housing, and if they're leaving might be one way to kind of tease out what you're getting.
Yeah, I think I like that people moving out. I also think we need to track people moving in because the reality is we'll have a lot more people moving in because Freedom looks awesome and it would be fun to live near that. But if all those people are moving in and making $120,000 a year, over time, just the nature of change, our city fabric will change. And I want people who still move in because Milwaukee's affordable or
Yeah.
Well, I like this, this idea of a survey moving out. How would you do that moving in?
could you do that when people hook up to utilities? Like we-
I mean, what that doesn't capture is apartment dwellers, right?
Yeah.
Because they aren't having separate accounts typically.
Yeah,
That's probably who you want to capture too, is renters.
yeah.
I mean, it would be interesting, I think, to just do that with Henley Place. You know, just do some spot surveying, you know, but, I mean, it wouldn't be, you know, firm data, but it would be,
This is also, I hate to say this, but we've talked a lot about a welcome to Milwaukie packet. And I still love that idea. That had like a little survey that people could fill out about why they moved in. And maybe that is, if Robert talks about scope creep, maybe the welcome to Milwaukie packet is scope creep. And I love that idea, and that might be a spot to do it. So all that to say, maybe it's outside the purview of this, but it's something I kind of want to track or.
Well, you don't have to do a complete census of everyone going in and going out to gain valid statistical information.
That's true.
And so, you know, I'm sure that there's some smart people who know how to use the central limit theorem to do that. And, you know, it's, the numbers aren't that big to gain, you know, valid statistical information, you know?
Yeah.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Mhm.
And I think these might just be for the greater good in terms of the measures and the analysis. A lot of what we're talking about makes me think about economic mobility, which is actually a measure that has been researched and documented across the whole country, looking at how someone's economic status improves over time. So if someone grew up here in Milwaukie, then the measure of economic mobility would say that they, through the course of their life, end up doing better than what their parents were earning. You know, it's a measure to be able to kind of counteract the generational impacts of poverty. And there's a lot of research that goes into it. I would be happy to send links. It's measured looking at economic well-being, education, health, homeownership, wealth, and then they have some other measures of economic status that are based on the marginalization of certain populations. But there is an Opportunity Atlas. It's opportunityatlas.org. And if you pull up Milwaukie, there is tract level data around the measure of economic opportunity in our city. So we could start by looking at that as kind of an overall measure, figure out how what we're looking at factors into that research, you know, if it's applicable. And then the piece that comes to mind for me is just what the local levers are. So if you have a homeownership program that exists here in the city and we focus on, you know, folks that have grown up here in Milwaukie, then we are actually seeking to impact their economic mobility. And we're doing so in a way that increases the health and well-being and the stability of our community. Because we're not just looking at, you know, keeping Milwaukie working class. There are, I think that there's an economic definition of that, and then there's a sociocultural definition of that. I think that if you're looking at the economic opportunities somebody has over the course of their life and where they choose to live, then we have that responsibility as a jurisdiction to try and put measures in place that increase the health, the economic health of people who live here. So I would be happy to like send, I don't know, Emma, you kind of nodded. I think maybe you've seen the Opportunity Atlas. If that would be helpful for this conversation, I feel like that helps put some parameters around some of the things that we're talking about and the intersectionality between affordability and economic development.
Great. Scott tells me Joseph's hand is up.
I put it down. You guys were on track. You brought it up. Thank you.
Sir, just interrupt us in the future because it's hard to
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I've added median income compared to area median income and then economic mobility and then sort of general affordability in terms of the housing specific kind of metrics to monitor, multifamily vacancy rate, changes in rents and home prices. And then we've already discussed that kind of housing choice decision making. So for people who are moving in or moving out, what's driving their decision? On the utility side, the three that we wanted to propose as sort of indicators to track, to improve our understanding, was one, utility customers at risk of disconnection because of non-payment. This is data that we track all the time. We have not typically publicly shared it because I think it's really important to state, and Michael, chime in here if I'm saying anything wrong, it is always our intent to avoid a shutoff. We will do anything we can to help a customer retain their service. And you'll hear from our utility billing technician in the next meeting kind of about all the steps she takes to do that. That said, I do think it's helpful data to track because it can show you, despite all those efforts, despite all the resources we may have in place, you see those impact of macroeconomic factors. Like we can just see it when like, wow, this month there's a lot and it's because the price of eggs has gone up so much.
In the last 3 months, it's
It's
become
been,
apparent.
exactly.
The last 3 months, it's been going up.
Yeah. Second is utility assistance dollars distributed per year. I think this would be a great one, for us to report on. It's the type of thing where, we didn't want to put it as a metric of success because necessarily, you don't necessarily want to say, yeah, the more money we can give, the better. Obviously, you'd rather have people not need utility assistance and have a stable enough and supportive enough income to not require it. But it's still, I think, again, important for us to track to know where trends are going and to make sure we're budgeting appropriately for assistance to things like St. Vincent de Paul, pointing people to 211 and United Way resources, and then also what we are able to provide in terms of discounts through our utility assistance program. And that's the third one, utility customers enrolled in the utility assistance program. That program is there for people in most need and who need it most. It's something we want to track. I think I don't want to say like the target is that goes up. Because again, we would hope that we're keeping rates in a manageable way and we're moving folks out of the space where they need utility assistance. But obviously for those in most need, it's the reason we have that program and we support folks in getting signed up for it when they need it.
Just so that you all are aware, right now, Amy and Judy are going through, and they've sent out at the beginning of May, a letter kind of for all the folks that are on the assistance program, that they restate their last previous year's income so that we're just making sure that everybody on that is still valid and still meets the criteria for it. So we're doing that now, and they're both working on that. And then by the end of this month, we should be in place that everybody who's on it will be up to date, that we would know the numbers. I mean, we know how many people are on it now. We would just know for the upcoming year how many people qualify.
Remaining eligible.
So are the people in the first category at risk of disconnection all people who are in the utility?
No.
And is that because there are some who aren't eligible? Or is it because people don't know about?
Well, we let them know. Amy does a great job of letting them know. One problem that we have is if somebody's close to shutoffs, and I should backtrack a little bit and say, our policy is very lenient on other cities around us use 1 to 1.5 months before they do shutoffs, which is about 45 days. We go out to at the end of the second month, which can be up to 75 days. So we allow a longer timeline for people to go on this. At that point, if it gets to shut off, we can't go back and retro and say, hey, we can put you on the low income assistance to decrease their bill. we make an effort that as Amy's having these continual conversations with people, and she's very, she always makes a point to say, to make a plan. Like if you want to make a payment, you can make a payment, but we need a plan for you to get the balance down. And in that conversation, she tells them about the low income. There's outside programs, outside partners that we have, and there's also, we can get them the form to get on our plan. So for the future, we're really trying to get them on it, but we also need them to get their bill caught up before that we can put them on the program.
And I will say, I think what you find is, say someone loses a job, they might not at that moment qualify or have all the qualifications to meet the utility assistance program. They might need a payment plan, to catch back up but yeah, I think in that outreach, all those door hangers, we're letting folks know about the program, how to become eligible, or how to let us know if they're eligible.
Our process is we first do late notices and we go to door hangers. And usually during that, Amy is getting a lot of phone calls and there's a lot of communication. The ones that are the problem is when we don't get that communication. And then that's where it usually leads to shut off because we don't know. We want to work with them. It's just we need a two-way conversation.
I also think I
Go ahead.
was gonna say from like my experience over the years, I think there's always a certain subset of customers that just are always gonna be late. They're always gonna try to they're just bad managers of their own finances.
And it may not be about inability to pay.
Right.
There's
Well, I'm guilty of that, so.
there's a number of conversations that Amy has had where they're triggered to pay. Their bill is their late notice. We're going to shut you off, and that's their trigger to pay. It's just how they work.
So I think this is really interesting. One of the things that I, have in the back of my mind is that, the city utilities are, one slice of the utility pie. And so when you look at PGE and like Northwest Natural and that kind of thing, we certainly have less opportunity to gather data. I don't know if we have no opportunity to gather data from them, maybe in an aggregate sense, whereas we know by people and by, location, but maybe they're willing to share that aggregate. And the reason I'm concerned about, them being left out of this thing is when you just look at the utility increases over the last years, Milwaukee's are pretty minor compared to those two.
Yeah.
And so, that's going to be much more of a lever in the affordability question. So would we be missing something important if we don't try to bring that data in somehow?
I think that, I thought we actually had something in there as one of the actions that we were gonna sort of advocate and.
We definitely have advocated.
Partner with the Citizen Utility Board, CUB. I mean, they're a really good, strong advocate for affordability, utility affordability, and being involved with them and.
We definitely have that in there, but I think what Councilor Massey is saying is, do you think, Peter, it would be possible to say, hey, PGE, can you let us know on an annual basis how many Milwaukie customers have had their power shut off because of an
We can ask,
payment?
yeah,
And Northwest Natural.
we can ask.
Well, and I feel like the
Interesting.
LEAP, they call it LEAP, right? Low
LEAP.
energy is,
Yeah.
do they, I feel like there's a state law piece of that, and so maybe they already collect that.
They already have their own assistance programs.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think there's some state funding that's, part of that, and so I wonder if they don't already have to collect the data. We wouldn't be asking them for something they don't already.
Yeah, LIHEAP, I think it's actually a federal program.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
I think they just laid off, like all the people that sort of manage that. But, that, yeah.
I mean, is the data point we're looking for to actually have the utility turned off or to access the program to prevent the utility from being turned off?
Well, I think ideally, I think we would have it just synchronized with the own, somehow. I mean, ideally, I think it would be the risk of disconnection would probably be more important than the actual disconnection. But I don't know what we can get wrong.
I think that the risk of, and working on a preventative sort of level is better. That's a better measure.
Yeah.
Because then we'll be able to tailor the tools that we put into place
Mhm,
to impact at that point rather than at the point of disconnection,
mhm. Mhm,
if we're able to
Yeah.
put a strategy in place.
mhm. Okay.
Agreed.
Better value, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my friends, we've got a half an hour left on this item. So before I move us off of metrics, was there any other data feedback you wanted to give?
Yeah, I'll give you some feedback. I think that this is a fantastic project. I really do. We're gonna learn some things along the way and that kind of thing, and we'll make some corrections, I'm sure. We're not all knowing, but this is really gonna help us, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that even if in 3 years, it's not a council goal, it's kind of setting up some systems that will be able to be maintained even after that. So, yeah, I think it's great.
Okay, so then transitioning to implementation. I've already talked a lot about the who here, also Professor Body, the council lead, Joseph, Peter, Michael, as the staff leads, and then shout out to Mandy Bird, who is a data whiz and really is going to help track a lot of those metrics for us. So this is a very cross-departmental goal. And each of our goals, we've tried to identify for you a board or committee that is sort of your go-to community space, I think, to get input on this stuff. And we really see the Community Utility Advisory Committee, the QUAC, your counterparts on Budget Committee, as the big advocates in the affordability space. And on the external partner side, Clackamas County writ large, but also specifically the Community Action Board as a body that really tracks and engages in this topic. We've talked about PG and Northwest Natural utilities that we don't control, but we know are big parts of the cost burden of Milwaukeeans. Developers, so the affordable house, or those who help develop income restricted and other housing. Energy Trust of Oregon and Community Energy Project, who help with energy efficiency work. And then the St. Vincent de Paul and United Way are both groups that we point folks to if they need utility assistance and maybe don't qualify right now then for our utility assistance program. And then Metro in all things. Was there Metro, I think we threw on there as well. Solid waste, exactly. Exactly.
211.
And 211.
The community providers, the St. Vincent de Paul and even like United Way, what cycle is that funding available on?
Like
So-
biannual?
Annual,
Okay, and is it first come, first served
yes.
for the metro area or just for Milwaukie?
No, it's the metro area.
Okay, so then I would be really interested to know how many Milwaukeeans actually access those resources,
Right,
because the competition is
fierce.
fierce.
Yes.
But I do think with the St. Vincent de Paul, we actually provide
Our own
specific
pool.
funding
Yeah,
to them.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Each of the
There's
utilities
a-
provide.
There's part of it from us and part of it.
From St. Vincent de Paul.
Yeah.
And do they tap that, do they deplete that pool every year?
Yes.
Is it one of these things that gets depleted early in the year? That happens a lot.
It can. I mean, when we were coming out of COVID, it went really fast. Last year, it didn't go it was able to stretch longer. I'm imagining this year it's gonna go faster.
Well, I was gonna say, in COVID, we had discussions about adding to it, right? And I guess that's maybe what we need to have a trigger about.
Actually, I think we started it in COVID. We reached out to say.
Yeah.
Does anyone know any more about the Community Action Board? I gotta tell you, I'm clueless.
That's just where Adam sits.
Yeah.
Adam is the chair.
You want to know?
He reported out to us a few times, yeah.
Yeah.
And he sent us, they are big bullets.
Yeah, that was the, when the county came and did that presentation on the Alice information, and that's where we got a lot of the cost burden. Milwaukie. So the Community Action Board is not, it's not limited to the county, it's a nationwide thing. And then the whole purpose of it, the whole mission is to, the war against poverty. So like what we deal with is we look at a lot of the budget stuff, where the money's going, how it's allocated, community partners that we can work with to establish, how we can lower barriers. And we have a whole strategic plan that we put together on what we're focused on. But yeah, the whole point of it is once a month. We just actually met last night. That's right.
Do you feel like the metrics in your strategic plan align with the metrics that are in?
Oh, yeah, because it's a lot of the same information, a lot of the same data that we're collecting it from is what's reflected in this actually, so, yeah.
Do you think that there are common outcomes that we can start to build in our quarterly implementation steps that would align with the strategic?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. In terms of the metrics, finding out that information. Like we're looking at also like some of the things that actually coincide with it would be like, how many, are we increasing access and awareness to what's already available, right? And like measuring that. We just looked at data from the last fiscal year of over 2,600 people were facing eviction, and 100% of them were saved from eviction. Their eviction was stopped because of the resources available. Right? But now we're thinking, okay, well, out of how many of those people are they coming back a year later for the same thing, and what can we do to ensure that that number reduces because more people are now stabilized? And, like the county, for example, and this kind of coincides with some ideas, right, is that they have a very limited case management for people once they once they get that rental assistance, it's like 3 months. And then it's like you're kind of on your own. And then the next fiscal year, you can come back and get it again. But again, that time, we're learning that 3 months is not enough to ensure more stability. Like there needs to be some long-term options, especially for the repeat people that are coming back to use it again, to find out what is the root of the issue and prevent it. So a lot of that stuff is what I envision kind of coinciding similar to what we're doing, and who's accessing the stuff that's provided and how many people are now being reduced from having to rely on those things.
Does the CAB have access to eviction data so that they could look at, if 100% of the families or individuals that are applying for assistance, if their eviction is stopped, but what happens within the rest of that fiscal year? Do they face eviction again and they can't access the funds because they have that restriction within the county? You can only apply once a year.
Yeah.
So
We're getting that data.
like 100% sounds great, but is it 100% across the board? Or is it like 100% stopped this time?
Right.
And then next month, 60% of them had to face eviction
Right
again
back
because
in.
that was not enough to stabilize them.
Yeah, and that's the data that I asked actually for them last night was,
Okay.
they didn't have an answer for that because that ties directly to how many are coming back. And do we have a number for that? And what are we doing so I worded it a little bit differently, but that's the same idea I have in trying to find that out. So they're going to get that data for me. So hopefully by the next meeting, we can have that data.
They should be able to look at eviction data
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
the courts have,
Oh, yeah,
and the
100%.
sheriff's office implements.
Right.
So
And they have the again, the temporary case management,
Yeah.
or short term, I should say.
I would say that would be an ask of the county's internal capacity to make sure that there's not the revisiting of eviction. And if we were able to look at that for Milwaukie residents, that would be huge.
Yeah.
But it might mean that we would have to look at resources outside of what the county can.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. No, you could definitely, and yeah, I'll make sure that we work on getting that data. And I know that's why I say 211. Oh, thanks. That's why I said, I learned from you guys. That's why I mentioned 211 because 211, you can narrow it down specifically to Milwaukee and you can find out who's calling 211 for rental assistance. I mean, you can narrow it down to, you know, at least I looked at demographic of how many veterans within this, in Milwaukee are calling for assistance. You know, so 211 is a big, is another resource to find out. Now, they won't give us that detail, like the eviction stuff, but that is information that I'm hoping to get soon. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. You worded it a lot better than I did, so.
Yeah, it's a team sport.
Okay, so for the last 20 minutes, let's move to the action plan. As you have seen in the previous ones, the game plan with this is that each quarter, we will look at what has been checked off, and we will look ahead a quarter or two and talk about what's on deck, what are staff doing, and then what are you all signing up to do to help move this forward. For this goal, to kind of set the stage, the 3 years, the first year focus was really about planning and analysis to understand what is most impactful in terms of affordability. There are limitless ideas of things we could do. We need to study them and figure out what's going to actually move the needle and also work with the city's systems. Then year two, once we've decided, okay, we're doing this, we build a budget that includes these strategies, then we're implementing and we're raising awareness. We're really launching that communications campaign that we talked about, making sure folks know what assistance is available at the city and elsewhere. And then 2027 is really about how do we institutionalize or operationalize affordability going forward as a value for future work. So, because this one had the benefit of being third on deck, so it has more check marks than the other ones did. Things we've already done, we discussed solid waste with you last month. We actually have a check mark next to review and update the fee schedule because we thought we were gonna adopt that tonight and then I got the plague. So that's gonna happen in 2 weeks and I will remove the check mark until it is actually done. But we have drafted the affordable housing code improvements. Those are now back with PC and they'll work their way back up to you for adoption. Things that are going on behind the scenes that you may not have heard directly about. Peter has been leading a utility cost of service study rate design project for water and wastewater. So what do our rates need to be for water and wastewater to meet the capital needs that we've got going forward? And that data will be shared with Budget Committee in August. And we are, I think, a couple weeks away. I think this is the month we plan to launch the Sparrow RFP, which is great. What you have done, tonight you're adopting or appointing new budget and quack members.
I don't think we're doing it tonight.
Are you not doing it tonight?
It's 2 weeks off.
Okay, never mind. But both these check marks need to go away because you also will adopt the fee schedule.
I'm looking at Scott.
I think if there are appointments for Budget Committee to come tonight, the tree board has been separated out for 2 weeks from now.
I didn't see it in the packet. Okay.
I'll confirm, I'll double check just a minute.
Okay.
See it?
You're talking about the goal action plan tonight. Councilor Stavanger, to your good thoughts, I added a sub-bullet there of aligning this action plan with CAB's. Make sure there's that crossover and we're seizing on good work. Advocating with Metro and the Regional Waste Advisory Committee for that solid waste rate design transparency. Love to get an update on that. And then hold study session on affordable housing models. So this is next week. We're doing a roundtable with developers of different types of housing, some affordable, some market rate, but to kind of understand the landscape more from the developer perspective of building in Milwaukee. And then for all the months, we have share updates on committee assignment work related to affordability. Any questions or thoughts?
There is one Budget Committee position being appointed tonight for the vacancy.
Any concerns or questions about those this quarter, which is almost done?
I would just say on the one that's not got a check about Metro and solid waste rates. I felt like at our last meeting that Councilors Massey and Coach Rabati seemed to be the ones wanting to lead the charge on that, engaging with Metro, so I don't know.
Right.
They
I think it
have,
just needs to be one of us. I don't think it needs to be both of us.
Send the captain first.
pardon?
Send the captain first.
Well, I mean, they do have I mean, you can reach out to them individually. They do also have the board that looks at waste rates, and you could go to one of those meetings. Unfortunately, I don't think there are openings right now. Last year when they came to us, they were looking for people to serve on that board, but I don't think there are openings right now. But obviously, those are public meetings that are open, so however you guys want to go about that.
That might also be one to get on the radar of the quack too. You know, I think it would align with their charge. You know, obviously they're there to advise you on your utility rates, but I think letting them know that this is a space where you might be doing some advocacy would be good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the other part would be working with Wes as well, as they go through their rate making process. It feels like we're sometimes not, we're not like spending time with them to make sure that where they're meeting our information needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we used to have Greg Geist come annually, and I don't feel like he's come in a while. And I mean, you go to West meetings, so,
I missed last one.
and I mean, last time they came on rates, it was pretty good news. They weren't raising our rates.
And it's good news this year too. They're not raising this year either.
But they are launching into their SDCs, which I
Raising
think
that.
are gonna be
They're going up.
probably gonna go up quite a bit.
Yeah, but it's gonna be they're gonna
gradually.
do it over 5 years. So it's not all of a sudden jump.
So on that note, Mayor, I think Greg's last update was either about a year ago or a little bit longer than that, but we can get the next one scheduled. I also vaguely recall we flirted with the idea of trying to invite Metro to come talk again about solid waste rates. Is that something you'd like us to put on the plan right now? Like start
I
that?
think,
Wait.
from my perspective, I'd just like to get a little bit smarter about
Okay.
how the advisory board and the board itself works before we do that.
Great.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna have us look a couple quarters ahead and then we'll probably be ready to pivot over to Dan. So when we look ahead at the sort of summer quarter, on the staff side, we're gonna continue that utility rate work and get ready to bring the outcomes of that to the QUAC and the budget committee in August. I mentioned, this isn't on the version of the packet, but I added it here. I'd like to bring Amy Francis, our awesome utility billing tech, to our next work session, just so she can educate you a little bit on the utility billing process, and we can get more data on the utilization of those relief programs. There's some code cleanup we need to do to make our utility billing system a little more efficient. Our code is weirdly prescriptive. It's like door hangers will go out the third Thursday of the month, which, as we all know, third anythings of the month can move so sporadically, like we're making our lives harder. So I think there's some updates that will be good for us and good for customers. We're doing a customer account audit. So a big piece here I want to say, and this credit to Michael. Michael has hammered into my head, one of the best things we can do for affordability in the city is have a lean and efficient administrative system. Whenever you have a clunky administration of a system, you're slowing it down and that's adding costs for people. So we're working on, and we have lean and mean staff, but how can we kind of make sure the data we have is up to date? The technology we're using is working the way we want it to, and that takes a surprising amount of work. So he and Amy are leading that audit of the customer. We're also going to develop an SOP for doing that updates going forward. I think you've heard me talk a little bit about with SAFE and SSMP, we use a TRIP methodology. We sort of set that and forget it, not because we want to, but because we've had not a great, amount of capacity or process in place to look at that on an annual or biannual basis and say, is this customer still in this class? So we want to make an SOP to make sure we're doing that well. And then we've talked about the community survey that'll happen this fall, and we're gonna capture data about some of our affordability metrics and composting and bulky waste day, as we've discussed. For you all, I think the next quarter is gonna be about you articulating to us what affordability means. And you're probably like, oh, we just spent an hour doing that. But what I really mean is, we're gonna have some tough choices head into budget about rate design or strategies that give everyone a break versus strategies that give low income folks a bigger break. And then maybe charge higher income or median income folks more. Everything kind of has a trade-off and a cost. And we can do a lot of things. We just need clear direction from you all on when you say affordability, it's like for whom and in what way. So we'll set up that whole conversation and prepare you to give that direction. But that's going to be a conversation we want to have with you in Budget Committee. We also then in this next quarter need you in Budget Committee to give us your laundry list of ideas of rebates and discounts and exemptions and all those programs, kind of like we did with the revenue study. Throw it at the wall and we will see what sticks. And we can show you, hey, if you do this, this will be the impact to all ratepayers. Or if we don't do this, here's the administrative cost, here's these things. On the housing side, we will adopt the Affordable Housing Code package next month, which is Housing Production Strategy Item E. We tried to code every HPS item here for clarity. Share updates on your ongoing committee assignments related to affordability. And then I have not forgotten about this, Mayor, and Councilor Stavenger gave me the contact of the person to reach out to at Clackamas Service Center, and I just have not had a chance to do it. So we will get that scheduled. I'll aim for next quarter so we can go learn about Milwaukie Heart and how that's functioning.
Oh, sweet. That's pretty cool.
Questions about that next quarter? Okay, and then wrapping up the year just really quickly on the staff side. So my goal is by the November, the last budget committee meeting of the year, we have shown you, okay, you gave us 10 ideas of rebate or discount programs. We evaluated them and you and budget committee have said, we want to see these ones in the next budget. That's what we need then to go design the budget for you in the winter and the spring. We have some impervious surface data that we need to incorporate into UB, and we're gonna do that by the end of the year. We'll bring those code changes for utility billing to you. On the housing side, we would like to have a work session to talk about high density housing capacity. That's the HPS item D, and get your direction on the work you want to see in 2026 related to that. Similarly, land banking strategy, we want to understand your direction for that. The community survey will be done, we can share the data, and our goal is to select a developer for Sparrow at the end of the year. So you guys get to provide us a lot of direction in that last quarter, review our cost benefit analysis, tell us what to put into the budget, and keep us updated on your committee assignments.
It's gonna be a fun 6 months.
Could you refresh what is the timeline for selecting the developer? Are you going through full RFP process or letters of intent? What will that look like and how does that fit in the 6 months? It's really interesting.
Yep, I'm here. Council Stavenger. So if I heard the question correct, the timing for the RFP?
Yeah.
And how it'll go. So as of right now, we'll send out the RFP in June, and usually there's about 45 to 60 days to receive responses. And then after that, we receive responses, we have a community and city group that will be evaluating those responses and grading them. And it usually takes 3 or 4, even 5 months to get through that process so that you can actually start working and on a disposition and development agreement with the chosen developer through that process.
So the announcement of the selected developer will occur after the grading, but not
Yes,
before the development agreement,
exactly.
then the developer would be made public. And then the negotiation of the development agreement would happen.
You got it. Exactly.
This is my own lack of understanding with RFP processes, but if we went out for an RFP and we didn't like any of the proposals submitted, can we turn away from the table? Okay. I do think, I mean, we talked about land banking in this quarter as well, but I think when we talk about that, the timeline for Sparrow, once we get the RFP process, to me, feels really quick. Feels like we spent, on the flip side, a lot of time hammering out exactly what would be in the RFP. And I think as we think about what these are going forward, I'd much rather see us set like broad RFP goals that we can kind of rubber stamp what we want our RFPs for different projects and spend more time in this. Like this process is where I'd rather have community feedback because they'll get to actually see proposals. They'll get a sense for what the development looks like as opposed to the front end. Maybe that's me just opining on this process, but I think this timeline is quick to me. It's the time before that I felt like was a little long.
But there's an aggressive timeline for this because that means that we'll be able to see some type of forward movement on the site.
Yeah.
The only thing that worries me about the timeline is that we're having a parallel discussion about what our intentions around land banking are. And if we're having that discussion, it doesn't align with the release of the RFP, then I guess I would just need to know how is the discussion of land banking, or is it being included in the RFP development? What does that look like? And where are the touch points with council?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't see them as really that intertwined. I mean, the land banking strategy is forward-looking and it's assuming money we don't have at this point in time. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I guess it's, potentially CET money, potentially URA money, but, yeah, I don't see how that impacts what we do with the one piece we do currently.
There might be a developer out there who has a land banking partnership that doesn't necessarily require a whole lot of our capital. And in the development of an RFP, I would like to see some type of discussion. We may not actually, have this as an outcome, but at least we should discuss whether preference points should be given to applications that have land banking as a strategy built into, the intentions for that site. Or are we thinking that that wouldn't be the case on Sparrow?
No, I think you would wanna, you don't think it's necessary to kind of build out your strategy as we go?
Well, I mean, we own Sparrow, so we're not talking about land banking. It's something we own. Land banking is about other parcels, right?
I think, are we conflating land trust or land bank?
Yeah, that's
Oh, you think, yeah, that's right.
I
Yeah.
think land, so
That's what it is.
this was super high, and we should be clear, so, and Mandy's.
The land trust, how to do that,
Yeah.
the process of
I
that.
think land banking strategy was, what's the city's kind of long-term vision for acquiring land to develop? And I think to your point about land trust, I think we did give preferential
Yeah, we
points
did.
in the Sparrow
Yes.
RFP to
Okay.
people
That's
with land
great.
trust models, yeah.
great.
I do think,
Thanks for the memory jog.
It's been a long time, there's a lot going on.
let's imagine you were saying, how are they connected though? In that context, I think there is an argument to be made, like the Sparrow RFP and this like process we're going through with this land banking, I would love to help inform our future land banking efforts. And so I think there are lessons learned or these timelines are interrelated, even though it's separate, like this is already done, not influenced by that process.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, whatever future land banking opportunities arise will not have all the constraints and challenges that Sparrow's side.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be part of the land banking strategy, looking for those properties that are nice, flat, and unconstrained.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I might stop us there unless anyone had burning comments on the out years of this goal.
Yeah, the one thing that I see, some of our things we talk about implementing, we don't talk about implementing a lot of the different housing production strategies. Like there's a work session for HPS item D, but no implementation. There's a work session for HPS item A, no work session or no implementation. Same thing with some of the ones below as well. And so
Yeah.
figuring out what that timeline is too.
Sure, I think that's a bit of an oversight of, we want you to give us direction and on what you want to see. And then I think we can populate the heck out of this table on, okay, now we know what you want us to do in high density housing. Here's all the action items. We can put a little more in so it shows that those don't just die. But I think this was us just sort of saying, we don't want to put cart before the horse until we know what you all want us to be doing, what our marching orders are. And I do think what you see in the way this plan is shaken out, there's a lot of work on utilities this year. And then we're gonna hopefully implement and ride. And I think that opens some capacity for some big housing work next year.
The one thing I just want to say for Sparrow is I just want to make sure that because we do own that land, we've seen through our middle housing development, some neighbors and community members come and voice their disapproval or their disagreement or their concerns. Since we own this land, I think it's going to be very important that we take a very community-based approach as well. Make sure that we involve them.
Thank you for saying that, Counselor. And one thing I will add on here in the council column that I've talked to Joseph and Mandy about is, we'll launch the RFP, but I think it would go a long way to have outreach to the neighborhood through this process be joint staff and council.
Yeah.
Because I think there are going to be some, there's some tie-in with CIP and maybe some infrastructure projects you want to prioritize to support this. And so I appreciate those of you who have already done a lot of that outreach. I think if we can go on a walkabout with, Mandy, Joseph, and you guys and the community, that's going to move this forward. So I'll make sure that's captured in our next quarter.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
The one other project that I don't see here is, I know you talked with Metro about coming back to talk about Harrison and Maine. After Sparrow, that would be the next big land banking project, and that has the potential for 100 affordable units. Would this be included in our affordability goal at all?
Which one?
Harrison and Maine.
Oh,
Harrison and Maine.
Why do you say 100?
That's what they said. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, was it around 100 affordable units?
I remember 70.
Yeah, it all depends on how much, what the makeup of the floors and the actual design. If it was all housing, yeah, you could get probably closer to 100. If it's commercial and event space, then yeah, probably closer to 50, 60, 70.
So many variables there. I see it's.
But
Certainly.
I think we can make sure it's not forgotten about as part of that land banking strategy. Maybe I'll add on here, including continued discussion on future goals for Harrison. Maine site.
And I would be curious, can we put the next follow-up conversation there? Can we put developing that RFP and community conversations like we promised
Sure.
there as well? Because it might not
Like
be.
we promised? I thought we
I thought we
we
said,
promised them by then.
no, but we said we'd start talking to the community about this. And I think whenever we go forward for it, whether it's 60 or 100, Sparrow's 15, this is going to be orders of magnitude larger. And I think having some type of timeline for conversations with the community might be a valuable thing.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, team, for the hard work on this, and excited to come back to you in, I can do math, September, the next affordability decision.
All right, thank you, guys.
Joseph, go back to bed.
Yeah, you don't sound very good.
Hey, great hanging out with y'all. Thank you.
And with that,
Send them
right
a
up
return to
Dan
office.
Harris.
Send them over
And
to you.
that's an emergency management coordinator. Still wearing both of those hats?
Yes, Mayor, that's correct. Grab my name tag, because if I didn't have it, how would you know me at all?
Well, we think you're Peter Passarelli, apparently.
Real quick.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. All right. This test is not going well already. It's okay.
Right now.
Right now. Can I just do like the old timing thing, you yell slide every time I.
Could you yell for that?
Is it on the sideband?
Yeah, it is. It is, yes. Just turned it off, turned it back on. Oh, but see, when I turned it off and turned it back on, it flashed. Could it have maybe gone to sleep?
Maybe.
I'm pressing the button, it's not doing anything.
Lucky bastard.
Going to sleep.
What
You're
is
feeling
that?
sleep deprived.
I'll get it up and I'll.
I realized that it
That's good.
doesn't really make a difference. I still don't sleep. This keeps me entertained. Really nice. Actually, I get more sleep when they, anyways.
Okay, well, with that, good evening, good evening, good evening, Mayor Beatty, councilors, thank you so much for having me back with you once again. As mentioned, my name is Dan Harris, and I am, for at least the time being, your Events and Emergency Management Coordinator. I'm here tonight to give you an events update and specifically to talk about Milwaukie Fest. It's going real well. All right, thanks for your time. Scott, could we get the first slide up, please? I like it how it's just kind of like reverting off to you.
Inception for
You know, when we think about
Thank
events,
you for
they're a
going
bit like a
Inception.
hall of mirrors because it's not, I can't do that. No worries. All right, the first two that will be up here in just a moment are Pride and Juneteenth. So several years ago, the city of Milwaukee made a commitment to support these two community events. And what this community-led events and what that ends up looking like is that Gabriela Santoyo Gutierrez, who you'll hear from tonight in the regular session, talking about some of these proclamations, and I work together with community members from the communities that are being celebrated, the LGBTQIA plus community and Milwaukee's Black and African American community, to organize and put together these two celebrations. This year, they're going to take place on the 14th and the 21st. The 14th will be Juneteenth. That's going to be from 11 to 3 in Ball Michel Park. Pride is going to be from 11 to 2 in Scott Park, just here behind the library. I will say that both of these have sort of drifted around the city for the last few years. It seemed like Pride kind of had a permanent home in Scott Park, but then due to the renovations last year, we moved it. Juneteenth had spent some time at Water Tower Park. But I think we're really kind of getting this narrowed in at this point and sort of nailed down as to what is, for what each one of these events is really the ideal space. And so that's what we've landed on. These posters were generated by the community leaders of these events. And I gotta say, two of my favorites that we've seen so far. The Milwaukee Has Pride Now More Than Ever goose is actually gonna be on a series of 300 event-specific stickers that are arriving week after next. So for anybody who wants a good goose sticker, there's thousands of you in Milwaukee, go ahead and come on out to Pride on June 21st. Scott, can we get the next slide up, please? First Friday, this is an event that is entirely community-led, but we do have it coming up on June 6th at the corner of Jefferson and Main. So this map shows some traffic closures that I just want to use this venue to publicize. The closure notices are going out tomorrow so that people who are going to park in the area, drivers in the area, are going to have some heads up. But we are going to be closing, or rather they are going to be closing a block of Jefferson and a block of Main, plus a little more so that Cha-Cha-Cha has room for, I believe they've got a dancing class lined up.
So I've heard their plan this year is to move up Main Street each month. So they started out in South Downtown Plaza, and they're doing this month, and they're going to keep moving north on Main Street. Is that the idea?
That's my understanding, Mayor, yes. And I think, well, I know for sure that they're going to be skipping the first Friday in July because it's Independence Day. And then it's, I think October, they're going to double back and come back to either this or the next block up. And they're skipping, they've made it very clear, like no interest in trying to mess with the bus mall on Jackson at all. Which is good, because if that conversation went that way, the city would say, please do not mess with the bus mall on Jackson at all. But yes, so I think they're gonna be moving north by about a block per month, and then at the end of the season in October, doubling back. Get the next slide, please. All right, Milwaukie Community Events Fund. This is sort of ancillary, little appetizer for the main course coming up here. The Milwaukie Community Events Fund was established and formally funded in 2024. So far, it has funded 5 events in the community. The idea here is that we can celebrate some of the historically marginalized and underserved communities in Milwaukie by making funding directly available to people seeking to organize events to celebrate their community. And that's looked like a few different things. I've spoken before about the speaker series at Spoken Word Books, or sorry, the discussion series at Spoken Word Books. Viva 33 hosted a Dia de los Muertos celebration last year. Right now, what's being supported is the Ukrainian theater and improv, not improved. Come on this morning, Dan, do better. Improv experience. That was originally slated to be taking place in June, and they've run into some scheduling conflicts. They're trying to host it at the Chapel Theater, so it looks like that's going to get kicked out to July right now. Also, the Resilient Seed Healing Farm. Resilient Seed is an interesting organization. They work with people who are living with traumatic brain injuries. And the idea of that event is to have this class on growing your own herb garden and to foster communication between community members and members of the community that they're supporting and serving, to help people have a better understanding of what that actually looks like to be living with a TBI. That also was dependent on another funding source that got delayed, so they are firmly moving out to July. And those dates, when they are available, will be publicized by the city. Thing in the New Year, which was the final award winner for this current round of awards, is going to be taking place on December 31st. And on my most recent check-in, that's all proceeding as it should. I will say that there is currently an application round open, and it's going to remain open until July 31st. We've mentioned it in the pilot, but I expect to see some social media posting about it and just some more publicity for it coming up. I'm submitting a dedicated pilot article about it for the July pilot. Those applications are available at milwaukieoregon.gov/events/MCEF, listed there at the bottom of this slide. And those applications are open until July 31st. Next slide, please. There it is. There it is. You may recognize this goose from such things as the event website or the calendar pages or the outside of this building. There are 2 8-foot-high posters currently hanging from the east and west sides of City Hall featuring this very poster. Milwaukie Fest is coming. It's coming in just a little over a month. It's going to start on July 11th with a movie in the park and live music, courtesy of Milwaukee's very own Couch Brass. That is also the first night of Porch Fest. So anytime that I mention this, I do want to say Milwaukie Fest, Porch Fest, any fest you like, July 11th, that's when we're starting
A
it.
fest of fests.
A fest of fests, very well put.
For the rest of us.
Fest of fests for the rest of us. Let's not get bogged down. I do want to offer just a huge thanks to NCPRD for this first night. We are partnering with them to make this happen. And when I say partnering with them, I mean that NCPRD is hosting a movie night in the park and has done a tremendous amount of the logistical lift to make this happen.
And that's
So
Ardenwald Park?
that is at Ardenwald Elementary.
Ardenwald
Elementary,
On
yeah.
the school ground.
On the school grounds, yeah. So thank you, I suppose, also to the North Clackamas School District for sharing their space with us. This is going to be on the field at Ardenwald Elementary. It's going to be starting at 7:30 p.m. on July 11th with Couch Brass playing some truly fantastic music right on home plate at the ball field there. July 12th, the Main Street Festival. We're going to talk so much more about this, but that's going to be running from 10 to 5 on Main Street in downtown Milwaukie. We're also not messing with the Jackson Street Festival. I really do not need TriMet mad at me. And then July 13th, an enhanced farmers market, which is going to be running at normal time, 9:30 to 2 on July 13th. It's going to be Children's Day at the market, and we are exploring some options with potential community partners to expand that outside of the market a little bit. That's coming together. Could we go?
Before you change slides, I just want to tell you, I worked the city booth at the market, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago or something. And there was a big version of that. It was part of the display in the booth. And about an 11-year-old came up who had some wraparound sunglasses like that. And he wanted his mom to take his picture with the goose.
Fantastic. So cute. So something that we're working on, and I will follow up on this because I actually have not asked for an update recently, but is a like a photo booth. And it was originally not going to be, I originally had the idea to do this just as like, you know, hashtag MW Fest or something like that. We've played around with hashtags and trying to find those, but get a good background like you see sometimes at a red carpet or what have you, maybe some big goose wings on it. But I also don't think we could go too wrong if we just had what I'm calling the really cool goose.
The really cool goose.
These glasses, for those of you uninitiated, like I was, I had to hear it, so you do too, are called pit vipers. And they're very much having a moment right now, I'm told. I think that this will probably be the goose that we use for this year and perhaps next year. And then we'll go ahead and redesign it. We redesign the winter event posters every year. We're going to keep this current.
They're particularly popular on 8th grade baseball fields right now. A lot of baseball
Particularly
players.
popular with who?
8th grade baseball players.
Okay.
That tracks.
That is our target demographic. Yeah, please. Hey, look at that. That's a pretty cool dogwood. Do you know what it takes to get Jordan Imlaw to break branding? I do. We got it done. Milwaukie Fest. So Milwaukie Fest on that Saturday, July 12th, from 10 to 5, we're going to be hosting 4 blocks of, I mean, truly, this is going to be an awesome party. On the northernmost of those, we're going to have Kids Zone. We've got singers, storytellers, puppets. Yo-Yo University is coming. That's right. We got Yo-Yo University and Luna's Ice Cream. The next block down, City Life. That's going to be 45 different vendors, city departments, community groups coming out and tabling. If you want to know about what's going on in Milwaukie, or if you would like to buy something, this is a great place to stop in. Let's Get Moving is our next block down. Milwaukie Jazzercise and Stronger Skate Park are coming together for something truly impressive. Really what this is in the morning, we're going to have some jazzercise and dance classes. And then in the afternoon, we're opening up that block to be a Main Street Skate Park just for the day.
Sweet.
Totally unrelated, that's also where our EMT tent is. And then down below that, we have what we're calling the Plaza of Champions, where we're going to have Priya Cam and the Milwaukie School of Guitar performing for us in the morning. And then in the afternoon, and I'll talk about that split here in just a moment, but in the afternoon, we're going to have Pacific Northwest Blue Collar Wrestling coming. Milwaukee's a wrestling town, at least it was, and for at least one more day, it will be again. I want you to picture the belt, because there's a championship belt. It is approximately 3.5 feet long. It is white faux alligator leather with gold plates. It is the Milwaukie Fest championship
Amazing.
belt.
What's the intersection of the Plaza of Champions?
Oh, yes, so the Plaza of Champions is our South Downtown Plaza. So that's going to be from Southeast Washington, essentially down to the post office.
I may hypothetically have a collection of Portland wrestling tapes that could be shown in a downtownish sort of performance space that
Yes.
day? Maybe we should talk.
Let's talk more about that.
You mean like VHS tapes?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a lot more.
The whole collection. We could have a marathon.
I like this a lot. Let's come back together on this. So I keep saying morning and afternoon, morning and afternoon, morning and afternoon. In the middle of the day, at the connected but unrelated Freem Beer Garden that they're going to be hosting on the north lawn of our former city hall, we're also going to be having a time capsule opening at 1 p.m. that day. This is the original 1938 historic city hall time capsule and Henry Point development. Actually, I'm attending a meeting tomorrow with Mr. Stauffer, where we're going to talk about what exactly that process is going to look like. But from 1 to 1:30, time capsule opening, and then you'll want to walk swiftly but safely back down to the plaza, because I am told that there is going to be a dance-off between our new Millie 2.0 mascot costume and Milwaukie High Zone Mustangus.
Oh, really?
It's happening.
This is actually not my project originally.
One thing I have contributed to Milwaukee Fest.
Harper's going to be
Dance off.
very excited.
With Harper related,
Let's
Harper
talk
can be
a lot
cheerleader.
more.
I'd like to discuss with you.
Yes, that sounds great, but yes.
So-
Mustangus.
Mustangus. Scott, could I get the next slide, please? I do want to talk about transportation for this event. We recognize that transportation is a hot button issue, particularly in downtown Milwaukee. So there are a lot of great ways to get to this event that do not involve a private automobile. That includes mass transit. One of our sponsors this year is TriMet. And although that does not translate into any kind of reduction in fare for this portion of the route, they have a huge presence here in Milwaukee. The north end of this festival is going to be taking place right south of the Jackson Street Bus Mall. The south end of it ends just over the hill from the Milwaukie Light Rail Station, Milwaukie Max Station. Park and rides at 3 locations up and down Milwaukie are available for people who still do want to drive part of the way but don't want to fight for downtown parking. And we're expanding bike parking at Jackson and Main so that folks who do ride their bikes in have a safe place to park, a very visible public place to park. That all being said, for people who do drive in, we have 4 different public parking lots. This is completely outside of vendor parking, completely outside of volunteer parking. We're not touching the 2 lots at Jackson and Main at all for those. We are going to be leaving the lot across from this building open. We're going to have the old Pietro's lot and then street spaces around downtown. Although I will say, just to be sporting about it, that there is going to be parking enforcement occurring that day. So anyone who is coming for a 2-hour stop should keep it to a 2-hour stop.
Quick question. Is there any way that, I realize like the level of festivity is probably maximizing the budget that we have available.
We're getting up there.
But is there any way that perhaps we could contract with some pedicab action to like run the gamut of downtown?
I looked into it, Counselor, and the answer is that it's $500 per pedicab. And so it, for the whole day, but it's $500 per cab. And so it gets to a point where if you're transporting, say, 2 people per pedicab per trip, then this is 2 at a time up and down what amounts to a quarter mile of street. So I think that it's not, I'm of the opinion that it's not necessarily cost effective on a $10,000 budget to be doing that. Although, of course, with sponsorships and vendor fees and everything, we do have a bit of padding. I'm a little bit concerned that for us to get the scale of that we would want, which I would think would be like 4 or 5 cabs going, then we're looking at getting up into the $2,000, $2,500 range, and a quarter of the budget. It just can't be pedicabs.
But you could get local sponsorship to provide that, right?
I don't know that that's feasible at this point. What I'm saying is that we have kind of maxed out our sponsorship contracting timeline. So anybody who was doing that would be doing it without credit. Anybody who was doing that would be doing it. It's not no, it is, I don't necessarily have that money available right now. And with the time that we have, I don't have a good way of going out and hunting for it in the next month.
I mean, I will say the one time I remember experimenting with pedicabs before, I can't even remember if it was the farmer's market or what, but businesses could pay to put a sign on the back. So individual businesses could go together if they were willing to spend that much to sponsor a pedicab. Yeah.
And play some great tunes while they
Or rolling wrestling billboard.
Now we're getting somewhere.
So with that though, I mean, it is a good idea and it's an idea that I looked into and I have not found a company that's going to do that in a way that I think makes sense
And there's no
budgetarily.
volume discount. If you want 5, they're still $500 a piece.
That is my understanding there. I can ask that question. I can scratch that a little bit more, but I think we have a lot of good options and a lot of close options, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to kind of get by with it. Also, though, this is a learning year, so we could get to the end of this and say, "How are you going to ever do Milwaukie Fest without pedicabs?" And I'll say, "I know, that's truer words were never spoken." So that's and if that does happen, then absolutely we'll make that a higher priority next year. Something I do want to say about this is just it's not in the slideshow anywhere, but we do have 2 other major events happening on the 12th. And the first of those is the Milwaukie Mile, which is advertised on the website. Both of these are advertised on the event website. The Milwaukie Mile is going to be kicking off on the trolley trail at 9 a.m. It's going to continue on until 10 a.m. And then at 5 p.m.
And it is what? It's a 1-mile run?
It's a 1-mile run and it raises money for the Milwaukie High School cross-country teams.
Oh,
So
okay.
last year they donated, I don't want to misquote it, but it was over $1,000. I have 1,300 in my head, so a pretty significant contribution. And then in the evening, the Milwaukie Parks Foundation and the North Clackamas Watersheds Council will be working together for their umpteenth annual duck race at Kellogg Dam. So that's coming up that day as well.
will the Parks Foundation be selling ducks at Milwaukie Fest?
Sure will.
Well, we hope to be mostly sold by then, but yes, we will be selling ducks at the farmer's market on June 15th. And possibly other pop-up kind of events, but yes, there will be undoubtedly, some number of ducks reserved to be sold the day of, yeah. And is the duck race these things are supposed to wind down at 5 p.m.?
5 p.m., that's right.
So the duck race would be like 5:30, is that the
Well,
idea?
what I said was 5, but I think what's going to end up actually needing to happen, and I need to reach back out and finesse this a little bit, but I think probably it will start closer to 5:30 would be my guess. Because if we wrap up the Milwaukie Fest championship match at 5 p.m. in the plaza, people are pretty close to the dam at that point, but not right at the dam, so.
And I do believe Dan is, if I'm saying nonsense, but Milwaukie Fest officially, the day 2 will wrap at 5, but we think a lot of businesses will kind of keep the party going in their parklets and various things.
I'm aware of Beer Store and Made in Milwaukee continuing to rock on into the evening. I don't know exactly who all else is getting in on that. I would not be surprised to find some kind of entertainment at, I don't know, B-side or anywhere like that. But I mean, it could happen. It could happen. I do think that it is probable that we're going to continue to see a number of different performances on into the evening.
Great.
Could we get the next slide, please, Scott? I do want to be respectful of time, and I see we're coming right up against it. These are just some thank yous. Thank you to our major sponsors. This is a combination of financial support and just like practical support. I don't have time right here to go through all of them, but these folks who are here and these organizations that are up here have made this possible. We took a $10,000 budget and right now it's sitting much closer to 21,000. And that is the kind of thing that can happen when the city comes together and when this community works together. Could we get the next slide, please? And also, I would be remiss if I did not, in this last update before the event, thank my planning committee, Sierra Cook, Chris Haberman, Luis Diaz, Rob Campbell, Rosie Herboth, Teresa Haberman, and Tyler King. These folks have been working on this since last fall. We've met monthly and communicated more often than that. I had some ideas about this. I received some ideas from my direct supervisory chain and from this council. But these folks here have been giving me that real world check-in and making sure that this continues to be something that is authentically reflective of our community and that is something that Milwaukie will be excited for. So there is no Milwaukie Fest without our sponsors, and there is certainly not even a dream of Milwaukie Fest without our planning committee. So whenever you all see this, thank you very much.
How do we express our appreciation of the sponsors?
Well, that looks like a combination of things, Counselor. They are going to be added. We're waiting for one more logo, but they're going to be added to these banners out here. They're going to be on all of the volunteer t-shirts. They're going to be on all of the posters. Actually, Scott, could you go back one, please? You can see we've got most of them added here to the bottom of these posters, which are going to be distributed around town. They will also be they're also called out on the event website. So if folks are curious about who sponsored Milwaukie Fest, there are a lot of good ways to find out who that was.
There was a Facebook post recently looking for volunteers. I assume you're still looking for volunteers.
We are indeed. I have a couple of good leads on that, but I'm still about 12 people short of where I'd like to be. So we're going to be probably putting out at least one more post looking for them. I've had some groups that have expressed an interest in volunteering en masse. I know that the Rotary has talked about that. I have a planning meeting tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to be asking our Rotary planning members to put the good word out on that. I've also heard from at least one of our local churches that they're interested in helping. So I think that I'll follow up on that and see if we can't get some more likely candidates in the pool.
Is CERT involved in it? Wait.
CERT is involved. They're going to be there. Well, not traffic because we're sort of moving away, and I'll leave it to Katie to speak more on that the next time that they're here, along with the Emergency Management Resilience Coordinator interviews next week.
Okay.
But I will say that the mission for CERT, I think, is evolving, and I think will likely be moving away, at least in part, from traffic control.
I just want to say Dan was very gracious to say there would be no Milwaukie Fest without these sponsors and without the planning committee. There would 100% be no Milwaukie Fest without Dan. Dan took this kind of harebrained idea and a lot of expectation. A lot of people, I mean, I remember my first day of ACM, someone saying like, gotta bring back Milwaukie Days. And then it was, everyone had big memories of what Milwaukie Days was. And so Dan has taken a kernel of an idea and all those expectations and turned it into something that, said to Councilor Massey yesterday, I think is like the perfect, quirky, weird, wonderful amalgamation of what is Milwaukie. And I can't believe this is just year one. Like, it's gonna be a great first year, and I can't wait to see where we go next. But
Thanks very much, Emma. And that's to that point. This is year one. So I think it's going to be great. And I think there's going to be stuff that goes slightly wrong and that we learn from and build on. And I think there are going to be places where we look at it and we say, oh, well, we should just do that slightly differently next year. And we will. This is the start. This is not the end. This is an event that we have budgeted correctly and that we have budgeted, I think, effectively. And I think it's one that we can continue to do, and that I do not expect to become inoperable anytime soon.
what we need from you, please share all of our social media posts. You're gonna get sick of them over the next couple weeks, but just spread the word, put up a call for volunteers. What else do we need, Dan?
That's really it. Please keep
Share,
folks
share,
aware.
share.
Milwaukie Fest is coming, second weekend in July.
Share that parking map. We have a great video too on how easy it is to park and ride. We'll keep sharing that on social as well. And if you can share that too, that'd be great.
The Parks Foundation Board meets tomorrow night, but I think we're trying to do a duck race t-shirt, which we haven't done before, so maybe a duck race t-shirt only.
Very cool.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
You, Dan.
Thank you.
Great work.
That might be it.
Okay, yep, and we didn't run over as far as we sometimes do. We have a break for dinner.
I like the spin.
We're supposed to meet in the break room for dinner, and even though there's no pizza, and we'll be back at 6:30 for our regular session.
I will be there. I'd have to go pick up my food at Rice Dye and then I'll be there.
Oh, I didn't even pack.
Great.